Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for what is going to be an incredible rally and kickoff for Kshama Sawant's campaign for City Council for Seattle's 3rd District. Woo! We are all here tonight because we know that Kshama is an independent fighter for working class people and renters on what is an otherwise corporate and developer-friendly council. Kshama has been a fighter for key issues we care about. $15 an hour. She's been fighting on behalf of the Black Lives Matter movement by holding SPD accountable for their ridiculous response to protests in downtown. She supported the struggle for Indigenous Peoples Day. She joined us in saying "Shell no" to the Arctic drilling rig being housed in our waters. She's been at the forefront fighting against anti-LGBT hate crimes here on Capitol Hill. And has been pushing for rent control and a massive investment in affordable housing. We're here tonight because Kshama has stood up against corporate politics and business as usual in this city. And because we all know how rare that is, and how moneyed interests will stop at nothing to make sure that our movements are set back in this next election. The road here, for me, to this stage with Kshama started in 2013. The first year of my organization, Gender Justice League, a scrappy trans activist collective here on Capitol Hill, launched Trans Pride Seattle. We wanted to have, thank you. We wanted to throw a grassroots pride march and rally on Capitol Hill to elevate our community's struggle and resilience. Despite reaching out to numerous politicians, some of whom were openly LGBT, Kshama was the only elected, or at that time running for office, politician who bothered to show up. Her banner read, "Ding dong, Doma's dead, onward to trans equality." It was a clear, and that's the same banner they ran with in LGBT Pride. It was a clear signal of how stark a difference Kshama is from most politicians who fear being seen at a march for the trans community. I've seen her time and again show up for underdogs in Seattle, and to show up for people who most politicians pass by on their way to big-ticket downtown fundraisers and Chamber of Commerce retreats. It's true. Most recently, I approached Kshama after 2 years of watching my community's efforts to combat the 3rd highest rate of anti-LGBT hate crimes in the country languish with only half-hearted and short-term efforts by the city to even bother responding. These efforts did very little to put a dent in the violence. There was another hate crime last week, as many of you might have read. Kshama asked a grassroots group of activists what she could do to support our efforts and our movements to address hate crimes. And with our urging, she used her position on the council to organize a community forum to put a spotlight on the issue and to hear directly from the community about what solutions they believed would work best. That is Kshama's approach. What we heard in that forum in February mirrors everything that Kshama's campaign is about. We need affordable housing on Capitol Hill and in the Central District. We need to tackle youth homelessness, which is an astounding disgrace for our community. We need to seriously address the out-of-control rents that are forcing our community out of our long-time homes and weakening the fabric of our ability to create a safe space and community on the Hill and in the Central District. We need good-paying jobs. And Kshama was the one to fight for 15. Absolutely. We need a fighter in office who isn't afraid to take on business as usual politics that seeks only to serve the interests of the corporate moneyed elite and developers, and who's willing to shift the conversation to the need of every one of us in this room. Tonight we're here to build the biggest grassroots campaign that this city has seen in decades, and together to send a clear signal that the time of corporate politics is over. The time of people-powered grassroots power is here, represented by all of us in this room. We're here to send a message across the country just like we did when we forced $15 an hour and by electing a socialist into office, that change is here. And that it's not a one-time fluke, that it's a harbinger of a new era of independent grassroots politics. So with that, I want to introduce our first speaker. Senator Pramila Jayapal is leading. Let's hear it. Senator Jayapal is a leading national advocate for immigrant, civil, and human rights, having worked for more than a generation to improve the lives of immigrants, low-wage workers, communities of color, and women. She is the founder of One America, one of Washington's leading immigrant rights organizations.
Good evening. How is everyone doing out there? I'm Pramila Jayapal, and I am so proud to represent the most racially and economically diverse district in the state, the 37th Legislative District. And I am also proud to be here tonight to stand in strong solidarity to re-elect a person who is one of the smartest, most effective, and most accountable to working people that I know, my friend, City Council member Kshama Sawant. So let me tell you something. We are in a moment here. We're 2 months before the primary. We're 5 months before the general. And the reason that it is so important for you to be here is because we are not just going to win this election, re-election for Kshama Sawant. We are going to win it big. Are you ready? Because brothers and sisters, this race is not just about Kshama Sawant. This is about all of us, and this is about the movement for justice in a system that is stacked against working people. And Kshama Sawant is going to be the kind of leader that's going to stand up for working people and that's going to know the difference between right and wrong. So let's talk a little bit about wrong first. We live in a state that is last in the country for our regressive, upside-down tax system. Boo. Yeah, you should be booing for that, not cheering, but I get your point. Where the top 1% pays only 2% of their income in taxes and the bottom fifth pays 17%. We live in a state where all all of the income growth in this country, in this state, from 2009 to 2012 accrued to the top 1%. And right now, the Republican-controlled Senate is refusing to pass a bill that would tax the 5,000 wealthiest people in the country, many in the state, many of whom want to pay, and would bring in $1.3 billion to serve working people, to invest in education, and to make sure our mental health system and our safety net system is strong. That is wrong. And you know, I was really proud to work with... And I was proud, thank you, sir, I appreciate your comment very much. I was proud to stand alongside Kshama and labor leaders to pass $15, and then I went down to the Senate and I said, you know what, let's be a little reasonable, let's try to pass $12 across the state, and they still said no, and the same people that are blocking that bill are the people that blocked it here, tried to block it here in Seattle, so we're just gonna take it to the ballot initiative and get it done there. Let me tell you what else is wrong. The other thing that's wrong is that we are becoming rapidly one of the most unaffordable cities in the country, and we are increasingly becoming only a white city, taking out all of our diversity in the city. My neighborhood in the Rainier Valley, where the median family income in my immediate neighborhood is around $48,000. And you know what? We are seeing the second largest increases in housing prices, and people are getting kicked out, evicted from their homes, their apartments, because they are seeing rent increases by 100% with no notice. That's wrong. Our schools are disproportionately disciplining black students, the beginning of that unacceptable school-to-prison pipeline, and that is wrong. And our state is putting less than 1% of total transportation funding into transit, and we keep resisting efforts to reduce climate change. That is wrong. So let's talk about right, because Kshama knows what is right. And many of the same entities that are opposing Kshama's re-election bid are the same people I'm fighting down in Olympia. Kshama understands the connection between the movement for black lives and the corporate system that profits from incarcerating black and brown people. She understands the connection between the death of the planet and the downfall of workers and the corporatization of the commons, the taking of what used to be public goods, from fresh water and wilderness to the airwaves, public health services, internet, and even our transportation infrastructure. And that is why we have to challenge any corporate agenda here in Washington and here in Seattle that insists on accumulating profits at the expense of workers and our broader society, that refuses to acknowledge that we can't just pass a $15 minimum wage, but we actually have to enforce it. How about that? Kshama is going to anchor a progressive left in the Seattle City Council, and she's going to demand a different vision for our city. I'm going to do what I can at the state level, and I promise I'm going to fight for all of these things, but I need partners here in the City Council and across the state. We need Kshama on the City Council because we still have a lot of work to do to stand up for working people and to do what's right. So what does that mean? We have to stand up against corporations who pay lobbyists and contribute to the coffers of elected officials to do things like roll back our payday lending laws in the state of Washington. We have to demand a renter's bill of rights and give cities the tools they need to protect renters by lifting the ban on rent control. And and taking back more property so we can build affordable housing linked to transit. That is right. And we have to demand accountability for shooting people just because they are black or brown. We have to fight to reduce homelessness, unemployment, and underemployment by investing in a jobs program and infrastructure, and we have to stop the billion-dollar tax breaks to corporations that are actually shipping jobs out of the country. And so, you know, you guys are making me late by all the clapping, but I'm saying, what the hell, I'm gonna keep going, sorry. And so to take on those who oppose those policies, we need a particular kind of left leadership on our city council. We need Kshama to win, for all of us to win, because we need a leader whose feet are planted in the plight of Seattle's people, whose mind is wrapped around a clear analysis of why we are where we are, whose hands never stop pointing out the contradictions, and whose gut goes with the greater good, and whose heart is full of determination and a steadfast belief that we will lift ourselves up together. So, if you are with me, and if you are ready, I'll tell you what I'm doing. My husband, Steve Williamson, labor leader, and I are pledging the maximum $700 each in contributions tonight to Kshama's campaign. And I want to ask you, it doesn't matter whether it's $1 or $5 or $500. What matters is you give more than you think you can, you knock on doors, and you pledge yourself to telling everybody why we need to re-elect Kshama Sawant to the Seattle City Council. Thank you very much.
Let's hear it for Senator Jayapal. Wow. That was powerful. Thank you so much. So our next speaker is Abdi Muhammad. And Abdi, let's hear it for Abdi. Abdi is a social justice activist, a union and community organizer, and was the first East African community leader who endorsed Kshama in 2013 and mobilized his community to support her. Abdi is very instrumental and advocates for affordable housing in Seattle and the fight against SHA's Stepping Forward campaign, which would have raised rents 400%. Exactly. He was one of the organizers to help win $15 an hour in C-Tech. Let's hear it for Abdi.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. My name is Abdi Muhammad from the East African community, an activist and labor union organizer. I'm very thankful to the organizers of this event who invited me to be part of this history once again. I met Kshama Sawant 2 months before the primary election in 2013, when a handful of people could even clearly pronounce her name without butchering. And today, Kshama is a household name in Seattle. Kshama supported and fought side by side with the immigrant community in the struggle to defeat SHA, Seattle Housing Authority, proposal to raise the rent of low-income families by 400%, and we defeated. Kshama played a very important role to raise the minimum wage to $15 in our city. Let us go and defeat corporate politics and give power to the working families. Thank you for your time, and let us win this again. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So next up, we're going to hear from Dustin Washington. Lots of hands. Dustin is the Director of Community Justice Programs at American Friends Service Committee, is a trainer with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. Yes. And is a driving force behind Seattle's Freedom Schools. Here's Dustin.
Many people have asked me, why am I supporting Kshama Sawant? So I thought about it, and I came up with 3 reasons that I want to share with you tonight. And the only thing I want to ask from each of you, if you agree with the reasons that I'm going to lay out, I need to hear you. Is that fair? Yes. So the first reason I'm fully supporting the re-election of Kshama Sawant is that she courageously stood up and supported the No New Jail campaign to stop the building of a new detention center in Seattle. And I gotta say, she was the only one on the city council. Everybody else vacillated, waffled, flip-flopped, but she courageously stood up because she understood that building new jails is a perpetuation of a racist prison industrial complex, and that building new jails is wrong public policy for our children. The second reason I support the re-election of Kshama Sawant is because she has been a passionate fighter for economic justice in this city. She has fought for a $15 minimum wage, fought against a 400% increase in rental prices for low-income workers, and fought for a people's budget. And we know that in this city, low-wage workers are disproportionately people of color, and renters are disproportionately people of color. And Kshama has had a vision around economic justice, and that is another great reason for us to support her re-election. The third reason, and maybe the most important reason, and I need you to hear me, that supporting Kshama Sawant is not just about supporting Kshama Sawant. She understands this is not about her. This is about all of us. This is about us building a grassroots, anti-racist, anti-capitalist people's movement to say no to the corporate agenda, to say no to the capitalists that want to make this city only a city for the rich, the powerful, and the well-connected. By re-electing Kshama Sawant, together we can send a message to the power structure, the racist capitalist power structure of this city, that we're not taking it no more. The game is over. We will resist. We will fight together until we change this city and transform this whole city and this whole country. Re-elect Kshama Sawant.
Okay. So next up, we have Bernadette Haskins, who is a nurse in our community who's leading the fight to make sure that healthcare is a human right. Yes. She is an operating room nurse at Swedish Cherry Hill, a member of the executive board of SEIU Healthcare 1199 Northwest. It's here for SEIU 1199. and a member of the union bargaining team at Swedish. Let's hear it for Bernadette.
All right. I'm going to start off by saying that I'm not used to an audience this large. I'm just used to like my husband and my golden retriever, Lucy. So bear with me. So I'm a nurse in the operating room at Swedish Cherry Hill. My 7,000 coworkers and I, from nurses to schedulers to cooks, are united in SEIU Healthcare 1199 Northwest. This year, we are bargaining a contract at Swedish, but we're not bargaining with Swedish, we're bargaining with Providence, a 5-state, multi-billion-dollar healthcare corporation. As a nurse, I go to work every day to care for my patients, but Swedish Providence is making it hard for my coworkers and I to give the kind of care our patients deserve. Chronic understaffing has made our hospital a worse place to work or receive care. I know, yep. We hear about it every day, patients having to wait longer for medications or for assistance to the bathroom. We leave work worrying about the patients we weren't able to get back to because of the 6 other patients that we needed to help. At the bargaining table, we proposed setting a maximum number of patients per nurse. Management said no. It's not just the patients who are going to lose under Providence management. Providence has also proposed huge cuts to our healthcare coverage, cuts that would mean many of my coworkers wouldn't be able to afford care at the very hospital they work at. Already, dozens of Swedish caregivers are facing collections or garnishment of wages for medical debt they have from the care they got at Swedish. This would make the problem far more widespread. Swedish made $59 million in profit last year, and they're proposing we get a 1% raise. That's less than half our cost of living here in Seattle. That means our families get left behind while CEOs lavish in million-dollar salaries. Swedish even told us that they can afford better, but they're choosing not to. Yep. So, you know, I'm here today with the backing of my coworkers, members of the union, because Swedish is eroding our community standards for good care and undermining good jobs in our community. One candidate is standing with us the whole way. When the community group Washington Can picketed in front of the Swedish corporate headquarters, they marched up to the CEO's office calling on Swedish to forgive medical debt. Who led the march? Kshama. Yeah. When management came to the bargaining table and told us we can afford to do better, but we won't, who is standing at the picket line with us? Kshama. She knows the solution is accountability at Swedish, at the bargaining table, and at City Hall, so that everyone in Seattle gets safe, affordable care, and so that healthcare jobs in Seattle are good, family-supporting jobs. The nurses and healthcare workers at Swedish Providence, along with our fellow 1199 members at Harborview, Group Health, DESC, Lifelong, Navos, all along the state, say we need Kshama in Seattle City Hall.
So has everyone heard that corporations across the country are worried that we might re-elect Kshama? Have folks heard this? And that they are funding our opponents' campaigns? According to Publicola, a recent fundraiser of one of Kshama's opponents, and I quote, was claiming hefty out-of-state donations were going to be coming in from top-tier donor counterparts from around the country who are antsy about Sawant's growing influence in a prominent city like Seattle, and they don't want her to be reelected. Right? What is clear from the latest public elections disclosures that came out this week is that Kshama's opponents are raking in huge checks from downtown developers, financiers, and the corporate elite who will stop at nothing to make sure that Kshama isn't reelected. We in this room aren't millionaires and billionaires, but we have the power to make sure their money doesn't buy yet another seat on the council. That's right. Here in Seattle, we will prove that ordinary people can defeat corporate power through grassroots activism. We can do this. I'm thrilled that this room is filled with all of you. But the reality is that we are going to have to knock on doors and convince our friends and neighbors to vote for Kshama. This campaign will be won at the doors. We are going to launch the biggest door-to-door grassroots campaign that Seattle has seen in many years. I know that it is not glamorous, but studies definitely show that door-knocking registered voters is the best way to convince someone to support a candidate. Nothing is more effective than a one-on-one personal conversation, especially if you're willing to share why you support Kshama. Everyone should have a copy of this Get Involved card. Can I see it? Can folks hold it up? Do folks have copies? I see some over here, over here. Okay, so if you don't have one, please raise your hand and volunteers will make sure to get you copies of this form. So please make sure to fill out this volunteer form and leave it at the volunteer table in the lobby as you exit. And there are 3 key ways that you can help us and that you can check off on this form. You can hang up posters 1 week from now. You can door knock on weekends and weekdays at specific times, or you can march with Kshama in Seattle's LGBTQ Pride Parade. I will be there. And if you're nervous about door knocking, don't worry, we'll train you, and you'll go in pairs, so you'll have somebody to go with you, and you won't have to do it on your own. You'd be surprised how open most people are to supporting Kshama once they have a chance to talk to you about it. But we need your help to go door to door. There are a lot of doors in this district. So please raise your hand if you need a pen or you need a volunteer form. Raise it really high and we'll make sure to get you one. So that's enough for me. I'll pause in the pitch and introduce our next speaker. So we were going to have Larry Brown, who is from the Machinists Union, and he's unfortunately unable to make it tonight. But we want to thank the Machinists Union for supporting Kshama and the 30,000 Boeing workers. Let's hear it. Who have been early endorsers of Kshama in this race. When people say that Kshama is against Boeing, they don't mean that Kshama is against the Boeing workers, because we know that Kshama is with the Boeing workers. Let's hear it. We also want to thank the King County Central Labor Council, who's endorsing Kshama, and for their incredible support. So our next speaker is Chris Hedges. Chris is a longtime war journalist, writer, and was an early and outspoken critic of the U.S. plan to invade and occupy Iraq. That's right. In 2002, he was part of a team of reporters at the New York Times who won a Pulitzer Prize for his paper's coverage on global terrorism. That same year, he won an Amnesty International Global Award for Human Rights Journalism. Chris has written numerous books on war, human rights, and American fundamentalism, including Collateral Damage and just out, Days of Destruction and Days of Revolt. So without further ado, Chris Hedges.
Thank you. I'm in the middle of a book tour. I just flew in from San Francisco. I fly to LA tomorrow morning. I'm back here to speak in town hall on Monday night about the new book, Wages of Rebellion, The Moral Imperative of Revolt. But I came to support Kshama because every action that we take now must be to destroy the corporate system of power in all of its manifestations. The time for compromise and reform is over. What is taking place in this room is called a revolution. We have been lied to, manipulated, used, abused, and oppressed enough. It's over. I was in Boston 2 days ago with anti-fracking activists collecting petitions for Markey and Warren, and I said, drop it. We are no longer going to appeal to the centers of power. I said the only thing you have to do, because they're building Kinder Morgan and Spectra pipelines to bring tar sands down through the city streets of Boston, is you have to get old junk cars, drive them in front of the equipment, take out the batteries, and walk away. Every single thing we do must be to send a message that we are going to destroy the structures of corporate power and take back our country. I teach in a prison in New Jersey, and I have taught at Princeton, Columbia, NYU, and these are the most sophisticated, intelligent, gifted, dedicated students I have ever had, filled with more integrity and passion for learning than I have ever experienced in a classroom. And let's be clear why they're in prison. They're in prison because they are poor people of color who never had a chance in the judicial system. And I'm not going to protest outside of state houses anymore. I'm only going to protest outside of prisons, and we are organizing those prisoners. We are organizing those prisoners in what we hope will be a national campaign into a union so that they will receive the minimum wage and break the back of neo-slavery. Because once the prison industrial complex, which is a business, has to pay a fair wage, it will collapse. Everything that we do now, every action that we take, has the moral imperative of revolt. It calls us to stand up to systems of power, monolithic systems of power, to systems of state repression, and wholesale surveillance to the stripping away of our most cherished and basic civil liberties. And as many of you know, I sued the president in federal court over Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act, which permits the U.S. military to carry out acts of extraordinary rendition on the streets of American City, and to the surprise of the White House, we won. This is why what is happening in Seattle is important, not only for the city of Seattle, but for the country, because you are setting an example of what cities across this country must do, and that is wipe out the Democratic and Republican parties and replace them. Replace them with socialists who are antagonistic to the forces of corporate power and will work in every way possible to drive corporate power back from our prisons, from our schools, from our health care service. Forces that have broken our unions and broken our capacity to resist, forces that have seized control of our media and dumped us with the most banal, ridiculous forms of indoctrination day after day. It all has to go. It has to go if we are to recover not only our democracy, but if we are finally to save the ecosystem on which future generations depend for life. These corporate forces are forces of death, and it is incumbent upon us to stand up for the forces of life. We can no longer ask whether we will succeed, whether it is practical, even if all the empirical evidence around us says that we will fail. We must rebel, not finally for what we achieve, but for who it allows us to become. I do not fight fascists because I will win. I fight fascists because they are fascists. And this is the fight of our life, the last fight. If we lose this one, we lose everything. And it begins tonight with you in this room with Kshama Sawant. Thank you.
So it is my honor to introduce next Chalet C. Crest, who is a policy analyst at the Urban League and has been a key fighter in so many movements it's hard to keep count. From holding the Seattle Police Department accountable for their irrational and over-the-top response to the peaceful Black Lives Matter protests, to standing up against the new youth jail, to fighting for rent control and the need to build thousands of affordable units of housing. Chalet has been vital and instrumental to all of these struggles.
Where are my Seattle folks at who made certain that those hardworking men and women were able to make more of a living wage? Where are my Seattle folks at? Where are they at? Where are the people who stood up to the Seattle Housing Authority, who were looking at the face of the mothers who had families that told them that we will increase your rent unless you have the power to stop us? Where are our Seattle folks who said, no, you are not going to increase the rent? Where are those Seattle folks at? Where are the folks who want to make certain that every single person, when they walk outside of their homes, when they are black, when they are brown, when they are men, when they are women, that they're able to walk outside, stand before an officer, and have just the basic right of human life? Where are my folks who believe that Black Lives Matter? Where are those folks at? Hello, Seattle. Hello, Seattle. Hello, Seattle. My name is Chalet C. Crest. I have had the honor, Michael Fuller, I have had the honor to be able to stand side by side with some of the great leaders in this city who stood beside those who have less, who stood beside those who stand against the corporations, who stood beside those to make certain that as Seattle's moving forward, the rest of us are not being left behind. I'm here to show the solidarity of this movement, the ones that stand with and beside Kshama Sawant. I'm here to make certain that she understands that we have her back, that she's not alone. Because you know, when you're out there on the front lines and when you're elected into office, like the position that we've placed her there, we did that. We've got to make certain that she understands that she's not alone, because she's catching a lot of grief for carrying our voices to the city council. Now, I've spent my career in civil rights, and I'm here to tell you, unapologetically do we cause agitation against the status quo. One of my favorite civil rights leaders, Frederick Douglass, he had a thing about agitation. He said, hear me this, he said, those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are like the men and women who want crops without plowing up the fields. They want the ocean without the mighty roar. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. Seattle, I'm here to tell you, Kshama Sawant is that rain and thunder and lightning for Seattle. She is the thunder that's going to make certain that Seattle remains affordable. She is the thunder that is going to make certain that as the transportation that's getting us to and from our jobs are meeting the corners of everyone within the district and the city. She's the thunder that is going to make certain that the rights that we fought for minimum wage, that no one is able to be in Seattle and still have those basic needs met. That's what we've put her there to do. But she can't do it by herself. Now, democracy has never been a spectator sport, so I want you to make certain that you let her know out there that we're with her. You let her know she's backstage. You let her know that the position that she's doing is to lift up our voice. So I want you to say it with me. Say, lift up our voice. Here we go, ready? Lift up our voice. Again, lift up our voice. when we have that little boy that's standing inside of the classroom that knows he's brilliant and bright, and that he doesn't know what to do because he's got a teacher who keeps suspending him from his classrooms. And he needs an advocate that's going to say, I believe in you, even at the city council. I want you to make certain that Kshama knows to lift up our voice. Make certain that her other city council people who try to hush her up, who try to make certain that she can't say her voice, make certain that those other city councils who are paid by the big corporate dollars know that she's standing for us. You let those other city council people know to lift up our voice. Kshama needs you. We need her. Let's make sure that we get her reelected. Reelect Kshama Sawant to city council. Thank you. Thank you.
So next, we have David Rolf, who is the president of SEIU 775, the fastest growing union in the Northwest. Representing home care and nursing home workers in Washington State and Montana, he has played a key role in both the fight for $15 an hour in SeaTac and the fight for $15 in Seattle. He is actively involved in SEIU International as vice president, helping to organize millions of workers in Canada, the United States, and Puerto Rico. Let's hear it for David.
What a crowd. Good evening, Seattle. Good evening, sisters and brothers. I bring the greetings and support and solidarity of the 43,000 home care and nursing home workers who stand united with us to re-elect Kshama Sawant to City Council. And we stand as part of a united labor movement committed to making sure the strongest workers' voice on this City Council returns to office this November. Because if you think about it, I mean, you think about the politics of our lifetime, and you think about the history of these past decades. Now, 40 years ago, there was a presidential race beginning. And if someone had said, someone running for president in the 1976 election, had said, you know what, America, it's all gonna be okay. We're gonna see no more lines for gasoline, no more double-digit unemployment. We're going to see the Berlin Wall come down, no more military threats to U.S. soil. In fact, we're going to invent new industries here at home that will create more wealth in the next 30 years than has been created in all of human history up to this point. It would have been pretty hard to believe that candidate, but they would have been telling the truth. And if the speech had gone on, my fellow Americans, of all that wealth, 95% of it's going to go to the top 1%. 5% of it to the top 10%, none of it to the bottom 90%. The bottom 50% of you all are just going to have to take a pay cut. What we're going to also do is shred the funding for urban and rural public schools. We're going to get rid of pensions in the private sector. We're going to transfer healthcare costs onto consumers. We're going to deregulate, de-tax, de-unionize, privatize, globalize, export manufacturing, import third world wages, and we're going to make sure that the same family that can survive on a single income today needs 3 a generation from now. No one would have voted for that candidate. Their political party whoever said it, Jerry Ford or Jimmy Carter, that party would have been out of power for a generation. But instead, what we received was, through the malice and negligence of members of both political parties, precisely the future that I just described. Now, here in Seattle, we have a different vision and a different hope for our future. Seattle is getting a raise. This is the first city in the country to to go to $15 in minimum wages. And because of what we did here, they're now doing it in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, something close in Chicago. They're going to do it in New York. They're going to do it in Boston. They even did it in a little place called Emeryville, California. All across the country, the movement that started here is spreading for $15. And only a few years ago, when folks in the White House and the U.S. Senate were hesitant to talk about $9, now they're rushing. Oh no, there goes 10 in the rearview mirror. Now it should be 12. Well, just give it to the presidential election, and they're going to be saying 15 too. Now, success has many authors, as they say, and probably no group of people more than the fast food workers who walked off the job without the protection of a union and went on strike for $15 in a union deserve the credit for what we accomplished here. We had the support of a united labor movement. We had the support of Mayor Murray. We had other council members. We even had a few businessmen, and I suspect a couple Republicans, who understood that if workers have no money, then businesses have no customers. Think about it. But there was no stronger voice for $15 than Kshama Sawant. The last time I was on this stage with Kshama, we were both part of the Mayor's Income and Equality Committee. Hundreds of people were here, mostly testifying for 15. A few CEOs of restaurant chains got up and said, we're going to have to lay people off, close restaurants, cut benefits. We went back and looked at everyone who spoke against 15, and in every case, they're opening more restaurants. They are doing just fine. The sky remains aloft. But the policy we passed here on 15 is really important. But policy is really only frozen power, and power only comes from a disruptive force. Kshama has been that disruptive force in this city's politics and on this city council. And that's why there are a lot of comfortable and well-off people who want nothing more than to buy an election and stop her from returning to City Hall. There are a lot of people in rooms much smaller and much more comfortable than this, raising money to stop her from being reelected this fall. They want to turn back the clock on what we did for 15. They want to turn back the clock on what the voters did when they elected her in 2013, and that's why it's so important that we all stand united to re-elect Kshama. And I've got some bad news. I know it's a little warm in here tonight, but the truth is that it's going to have to get a little warmer and a little hotter before this thing is done, because elections are not won by sitting and listening to speeches. Elections are won and lost by giving dollars and knocking on doors and making phone calls and volunteering your time, and that's what I need you all to do between now and August to re-elect Kshama Sawant to City Council. You know, Mahatma Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Right now, there are a lot of people fighting against Kshama's re-election. We need to make sure she wins, because 100 years from now, no one's going to remember my name or your name or any celebrity's name or any senator's name. They're going to remember whether a handful of courageous souls in the upper left corner of this country had the courage to stand up for the American dream when it was at its greatest level of risk. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker barely needs an introduction. Jill Stein was the 2012 Green Party candidate for president and has set up an exploratory committee for 2016. She's been a longtime physician in Massachusetts, a longtime environmental activist, and an outspoken critic of the corporate two-party system. Jill was arrested for protesting not once, not twice, but 3 times while running for president. first for standing up against the Keystone XL pipeline. Second, for fighting evictions in Philadelphia. And finally, and distinctly most undemocratic, simply for trying to enter the presidential debate. Please join me in welcoming Jill Stein.
Thank you. Thank you to Kshama Sawant, and thank you to Seattle for leading the charge for all of us all across this nation. This is the new battle in Seattle, to get Kshama, to ensure that Kshama returns to the Seattle City Council, because she and Seattle are fighting for us all. No pressure, but what happens in Seattle will not stay in Seattle. You're doing this. Your victory for living wages, Kshama's victory, Seattle's victory, the workers' hard-fought victory is a victory for us all that lets us raise the bar all across the nation and call for a national living wage of $15 an hour. The coalition that Kshama helped pull together for a people's budget is exactly the kind of coalition that we need to be pulling together all across the nation. Her fight for funding for social services, for raising the wages of the lowest paid city workers. This is a huge achievement that should be repeated all across the nation. Her success in bringing more resources to the homeless encampment in Seattle was long overdue. That should be repeated in the homeless encampments all over this country. Kshama's fight to get new funding for a new women's shelter is critically needed all over this country. And her success with this coalition of increasing the funding for public transportation, of establishing linkage fees for affordable housing, requiring developers to pitch in, and her fight to fight against new youth jails, and the fight against racist brutality and police violence. These are fights that we must repeat and energize and intensify all across the nation. And likewise, what was that? Education, not incarceration. Absolutely. Education, not incarceration. Education, not incarceration. Absolutely. At incarceration. These are the fights that we must repeat across the country. Kshama's election showed what we can do with an independent left candidate who has the power of the people behind her and who is behind the power of the people. This is So together, Kshama and Seattle have been showing exactly what we can do with independent politics. And this is what people are clamoring for all over the country. We know that polls now show that nearly 60% of people are saying that the corporate Wall Street-sponsored political parties have abandoned the American people. It's time for a new force in politics. And that new force is modeled on what you are achieving here in Seattle. In 2014, in the midterm elections, people voted. They voted with their feet by staying home in the lowest turnout election ever. That tells us what people want. They do not want more of the spineless Democratic and Republican candidates that are in bed with corporate money and with the Wall Street predators. And it's no wonder that people have had enough, because 1 out of every 2 American families is now in poverty or heading towards poverty under this predatory economic system. 1 out of every 3 African American men is held hostage by the violent and massive prison state, the racist prison state. 40 million American students and former students are held hostage by debt that makes them essentially indentured servants for the long haul. We can fix this, but not inside of the Democratic Party. We have seen what the reform efforts inside the Democratic Party come to. They come to the administrations that we have seen under Barack Obama. They come to what was achieved under Jesse Jackson and under Dennis Kucinich or Reverend Sharpton, which is, you know, a feel-good moment, but a moment that ends with the Democratic Party continuing to march to the right and the progressive forces of independent politics having been corralled and brought back inside of the Democratic Party. It's time for us to stand up for independent politics and the future we deserve, not only in Seattle, but all across the nation. What happens in Seattle should not stay in Seattle. We must nationalize these victories. We must nationalize these struggles, demand living wages and union rights all across the country, health care, education, and housing as human rights, abolish student debt, make public higher education free, end police brutality and the racist prison state. This begins here in Seattle. This fight has begun in Seattle. We must continue this in Seattle. We must get to victory. I will be doing my part as a presidential candidate to raise the profile over the course of the next many months so everyone knows about the struggle in Seattle. We will all be helping to ensure that Kshama wins. Donate to Kshama, get out and work for Kshama, knock on doors and make those phone calls. Together, we will prevail in Seattle. We will prevail across the nation. Elect Kshama.
So next up, a visitor from very far away, Christos Giannopoulos, who, yes, is a founding member of Solidarity for All, a grassroots network of self-organizing solidarity structures, and a member of Syriza, the ruling party of Greece.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me and a very big responsibility to bring to you the solidarity of the Greek people. And also I'm extremely pleased because the best news I've heard since I've been in this country, and this is my first time in this country, it is that a young activist that came from the grassroots, a young socialist, it holds a seat in a council, in a town council in the metropolis of capitalism and imperialism. And I think this victory, a small victory, but a big start, the big first step, and it's a victory that we cannot afford losing it. So we should do whatever it takes in order to get Kshama Sawant again into the council. As you know, in Greece, the Greek people have suffered the most brutal assault of neoliberalism in order neoliberalism to get over its crisis. But the Greek people, they refused to be the guinea pigs of this system. And they stood up. They resisted. They removed the two-party political system. And they put a left force in office in order to open new ways of hope. But what we realize it is by being in the office doesn't mean that you have the power. Taking the power is not enough, or removing someone from power. What we should do, it is build power. Building power from the grassroots. And this is why Kshama's re-election is important, because we need people we need representatives not only that serve the people, but they give space to the people to organize themselves. So this is what the grassroots solidarity movement has been doing in Greece. We speak about more than 350 solidarity clinics, solidarity food banks, cooperatives, self-organized factories, etc. And for those that want to learn more about it, we have tomorrow a meeting at 7 o'clock in the afternoon at the University Temple United Methodist Church, and on Monday another solidarity forum in Hillman City Collaboratory. So thanks again. I wish you all the best. We need you because we give us a common struggle. We cannot win without you. You cannot win without us. We're in all this together and part of the people.
I'm honored to introduce Ruth Coppinger, who is a Socialist Party Member of Parliament for Dublin West in Ireland. Let's hear it. She's a leading figure in the movement against austerity and the water charges in Ireland. She has also moved a bill to repeal the 8th Amendment ban on abortion in Ireland. And has worked extensively on other issues related to women's rights.
Whoa, I'd no idea there was so many people when I was back there. Comrades and friends, I'm delighted to be here in the US and in Seattle, and I bring solidarity from the Socialist Party in Ireland, which is a sister party of Socialist Alternative. 100 years ago, the great Irish socialist and trade union leader Jim Larkin also came to America. He was planning a short stay, but he ended up staying for 7.5 years. It was a visit that included imprisonment and deportation for his anti-war activities. It Instead, the Irish establishment, when they come to America, they present a bowl of shamrock to the White House. They bow down and fawn in front of American multinationals. They beg and plead for them to come to our country, to use it as a tax haven. The Googles, the Facebooks, the Starbucks. Starbucks, for example, paid $37,000 in tax in 7 years. I paid more than that in 7 years. And unfortunately, I only have a few days here in America, but the purpose is the same as that of the brilliant Jim Larkin, who was a great trade union leader. It's to build links. It's to learn from the struggle here in America. It's to pass on any knowledge and assistance that we have. And it's to show solidarity and share ideas between all of us who want a better and a different world. Now, every time you clap, that's taken up my time, comrades, so please bear that in mind. Now, Chris Hedges has written about a corporate coup d'etat with no internal constraints, and we know exactly what he means, because as I left Ireland, Ireland's richest man, who's a tax exile, he's in the top 200 billionaires in the world, he's called Dennis O'Brien, was attempting not just to gag journalists from reporting on his business activities, but elected representatives in Parliament as well. His story is the epitome of the control of the planet by the billionaires. Now, we're told from the cradle that the rule of capitalism is we need these great risk takers, these venturers. It's vital for society to function. You've all seen The Apprentice, I assume. But Dennis O'Brien built his wealth on political patronage. That's the kind word for bribes and for connections, and which has allowed him to acquire most of the media in Ireland, lucrative state contracts and write-downs on his debts. The most recent contract he's been awarded is the one for the water meter installation, which is going to gouge families of much needed, it's going to profiteer from their necessity for water. Now, the movement against the new water charges that have been introduced in Ireland represent a fight back after 7 years of brutal austerity, where the speculative gambling debts of a tiny elite of the super rich were paid by working class and ordinary people. UNICEF have reported that children in Ireland have lost 10 years of income progress because of the bank bailout. 18% of our youth have emigrated. $16,000 has been taken out of the pockets and the futures of every man, woman and child in the country to bail out the banks. Meanwhile, our public services have been decimated. Now, this is mirrored, as you heard from the previous speaker, Christos, throughout Europe to different extents. Greece being the worst example, where there's a humanitarian disaster taking place in Greece, where suicide, prostitution, street begging are at epidemic levels because of the crisis of capitalism, so that the private debts of European banks could be shored up and capitalism itself could be saved. Now, in Ireland, the anti-water charges movement has given people at last a focal point to protest. It's given them the power to fight back. On October the 11th last year, we had 100,000 people marched on the streets of Dublin. On November the 1st, we had 200,000 people marching in local protests. And we're seeing this phenomenon throughout Europe, where the left, where anti-austerity movements are increasing in support. Obviously, the election of Syriza in Greece, the first left government in Europe, is a huge step forward. Podemos in Spain is another trend as well. And we need to build a political challenge from the anti-water charges campaign as well, to take on using the new activists, the new ordinary people that are becoming involved in political activity, to take on the parties of austerity and the corporate agenda. It's a corporate agenda, as I said, that sees the country fleeced by these multinational companies who pay little or no tax. They don't pay the headline rate, even though it's the lowest in Europe. While our homelessness doubles, people are sleeping in their cars and on the streets. And these signs of change, I'm glad to bring positive developments from Ireland. We had the historic vote for marriage equality. I'm proud. This is the first country that's had a popular vote on marriage equality, and it's been passed in Ireland. Obviously, this is a really important achievement for the LGBTQ community to lift discrimination that they faced for decades. And it wasn't the establishment who granted it. It was that community itself who fought for that for decades. Instead, the Irish establishment has clung to the Catholic Church for 95 years. And what we've seen by that vote is that people are not willing to tolerate that situation any longer. I have to say, I've been involved in political activity for a long time, but it was really inspiring to see 66,000 people registered late to vote in the marriage equality referendum. 50,000 people flew home from all corners of the globe to vote. Young people, I heard about your door knocking, we call it canvassing, and young people volunteered to go canvassing on this issue like never before. Women, if you met women, they were most likely to be voting yes. But what is really, really important for people here to recognise is that in working class areas, the vote was the highest, 80% plus. Some of the most deprived communities that have been hit savagely by austerity voted 89%, 90% yes. And there was queues at stalls to get buttons, such as I have here. And it's just so important to recognise that working class people have broken most decisively with the Catholic Church. And we have to harness this movement to separate church and state now in our education system, in our health. We don't need archbishops sitting on the boards of maternity hospitals. We don't know what their gynecological expertise is, but it's certainly not there for the betterment of women. And most obviously, we now need to repeal the 8th Amendment, the medieval amendment that outlaws abortion in our Constitution, that was put there in 1983 at the behest of a Catholic lobby who twisted the arms of a cowardly government. And no woman of childbearing age in Ireland has had a vote on that since. Even though thousands of women, of course, leave every year at great expense, stigma and secrecy for abortions in Ireland. And we had, of course, the tragic death of Savita Halapanavar, an Indian woman in our country who was deprived of an abortion. Now, we anticipate, friends, a flood of funds from for the anti-abortion campaign whenever it happens, from the US Christian right. We already know that the Westboro Baptist Church are very upset with Ireland for voting yes. And Ireland is really upset as well. So the battle to wrest control of the 1% is an international battle. And it has ever been thus. It's always been thus. The Irish famine, which took place in the 1840s, who was it who sent aid and solidarity from America? It was the Choctaw people, the Native American people, who sent $170. Not the wealthy, but the most deprived and persecuted people who'd already faced their own trail of tears 16 years before, sent $170 in a donation for the Irish famine. Calcutta as well. It's always the poor, the ordinary people, the working class who empathise and who spread international solidarity. And the 1%, they know the importance of international solidarity with each other. Do we, though? That's a really important question. We have to build links. Dennis O'Brien, I was researching the billionaire that I spoke of, has huge links with the Clintons, unfortunately. Bill Clinton flew over on his private jet to an economic forum in Ireland. This is why the election of Kshama Sawant, why I've taken time out from my busy schedule to come here. Because Kshama's election is an inspiration to you, but it's an inspiration to us as well. Because Europeans see America as an indomitable fortress of capitalism. Most Europeans would not even be aware that there is a left, that there are people campaigning for an alternative vision of society, it just would not be known to people in Europe at all. So when lefts and socialists get elected and put forward in a really principled way and a clear way, left and uncompromising socialist ideas, that's actually vital for us in Europe as well to see. And in finishing, I appeal to everybody who's here today to get involved in Kshama's campaign. It's already been said about the phoning, the door knocking, being an advocate for Kshama in any way possible, whether it's introducing her to your friends and neighbours, bringing her to your local school, to meet other parents, whatever it is you can do, you can advocate and build support for her. But I'm also would say to people here tonight who've travelled to this fantastic, fantastic turnout on a Saturday warm night, become a socialist as well. Because we need to build an alternative set of ideas to this system. And socialism are the only set of ideas that are an alternative to capitalism. 100 years ago this month, I'll just finish on this, the great Irish socialist and trade unionist, as I said, Jim Larkin, who by the way, was a great advocate of women's suffrage and who came to the US to campaign against the slaughter of the First World War. But he said a very important quote at a major rally in Madison Square Garden in New York in 1915. He said, "It takes great men and women to stand up and say, we are socialists. We socialists are against war on the fields of battle, but we're also against a more brutal war, the war of capital against the men and women who are oppressed and have only their labour power to sell. We socialists want more than a $1 increase for the workers. We want the earth." Thanks, comrades and friends.
Thank you so much, Ruth. This has been an amazing rally. I'm pumped. I don't know, are you all pumped? Good. Nobody should leave here without filling out a volunteer form. Can I see the volunteer forms? Who has them left? Hold some up. I see some over here. So I'm here to remind you, volunteer forms, you have a number of options. You can hang up posters, you can door knock on weekends or weekdays at specific times, and you can march with us in the LGBTQ Pride Parade. So please fill out your forms and make sure to turn them in downstairs at the volunteer table. So without further ado, I'm gonna invite Kshama to come out and speak to us tonight.
I love you all too. Sisters and brothers, thank you for being here today. Seattle has a choice between two visions for its future. In the vision taking shape for years now, our city is being turned into a playground for the super wealthy and a profit machine for big developers, while most of us face a severe housing crisis. We face underfunded transit and education, strikingly inadequate youth job programs, even basic infrastructure. We face skyrocketing rents, and increasing homelessness, we have the worst gender pay gap in the country. Racial disparities in our schools and our justice system are disgracefully all too alive. Wage theft is rampant. The historic LGBTQ and artist and activist communities in Capitol Hill and the Black community in the Central District have been under siege from this developer-driven agenda. But our city is booming for others. A recent count found 80 construction cranes on the skyline of Seattle, many of which are being used to build luxury housing by the thousands. The major corporations based in our city and region are benefiting handsomely, their stocks and shares rising along with the new business towers downtown. I have a different vision for Seattle. A Seattle based on social justice, free from discrimination and poverty, where our city is a leader in mass transit and environmental sustainability. Where we have a powerful labor movement, a working waterfront, and good-paying union jobs across all sectors of our workforce. My vision, our vision, is of a city that is affordable and livable for the 99%, where young people, retirees, all people are able to flourish and live in dignity. A city of equality between people of different colors, gender identities, immigrants or First Nations. A city which never for a moment forgets that Black lives matter. I think this vision is worth fighting for. Do you think it is worth fighting for? This election race in District 3 is unusual. Our growing movement has made it so. Our movement has fundamentally challenged the big business agenda in this city. As we all know, the corporate elite in Seattle have been used to owning politics. They are used to having their loyal servants at the wheel in control. When the Chamber of Commerce calls, they have become accustomed to most elected officials sitting up in attention. When we called the corporate politicians out for interrupting city budget discussions for their visit to a Chamber of Commerce retreat, the politicians' defense was, well, this is how it's always been done. what's the scandal here? We do this every year. Well, my sisters and brothers, that is the scandal. When I was elected to City Hall a year and a half ago, I did not arrive alone. Along with me were the aspirations of tens of thousands of people. Into City Hall many times now have come hundreds with me. Again and again, we have filled the chambers. Many people for the first time felt the sense of collective empowerment. Council member Nick Licata and myself recently organized a town hall for affordable housing. City Hall was filled by ordinary people in a way that it has not been in a long time. People demanded action with one voice on the housing crisis. They demanded rent control to make Seattle affordable. They demanded the city build thousands of units of high-quality, affordable housing, publicly owned, controlled, and maintained, to finally provide an alternative to the market's spectacular failure. They demanded tenant rights, fair notice about major rent hikes, and a defense against economic eviction. So, has the establishment, the mayor and the right wing of the council, have they got to work on affordable housing? No. Did the mayor press his housing committee to finally come up with something? No. He gave them another month's reprieve. He did respond, in a way, to our demands. He proposed a bill not to address the housing crisis, but a bill to attack free speech. It was an attempt to send a chilling message against all those of us organizing for housing justice. I objected. We all did. The National Lawyers Guild and the American Civil Liberties Union also objected, saying this bill is anti-free speech. This bill is an attack on the First Amendment. But rather than throwing the bill into the trash can, the right wing of the council followed the mayor's demands until they were stopped this very week by the city's Ethics Commission. Corporate politicians, my sisters and brothers, need to be constantly reminded of the constitutional rights of the rest of us. The leadership for this city is coming not from corporate politicians, but from our movement. A movement that has included low-wage workers, labor unions, teachers and students, artists and activists, and the faith communities. Let us be clear. What we have won in social change has come because of our determination and sacrifice. Our coalitions that have been based on honesty and integrity. Our clarity that the ruling elite may occasionally pay lip service to us, but almost single-mindedly serve the interests of big business. We have won the historic $15 an hour minimum wage. We built action groups in neighborhoods across the city. We mobilized thousands to rallies, to marches, and into City Hall. I see many of you leaders of the Fight for 15 here tonight. I thank you. McDonald's, Burger King, Starbucks, QFC, all of them will have to pay their workers at least 15 in a year and a half, January 2017. Thank you. The executives and the billionaires will hate it, but they have to accept it. Our 15 Now campaign has gone nationwide. The massive metropolitan area of Los Angeles has just won 15. Los Angeles has over 800,000 workers making less than 15. It all began here. SeaTac and Seattle began this historic movement against economic inequality. We have gone on here in Seattle to win millions in last year's budget for working people, to win services for the homeless, a year-round women's shelter. When the mayor denied the city's own lowest paid workers $15 an hour, we stepped in and made it happen to the People's Budget Movement. We established the Indigenous Peoples Day. Our movement stopped rent hikes of 400% in affordable housing at the Seattle Housing Authority. We took a stand against the disastrous anti-worker, anti-environment, Trans-Pacific Partnership. But make no mistake, the elite see one thing, and they see that clearly. They want this challenge to the status quo to stop. They want our movement to go away. They want to return to a cozy, quiet city hall and their behind-the-scenes negotiations. That's what I want to hear. And they will mobilize big corporate money this year and months of mudslinging and slimy personal attacks to try and get their way. We cannot let them win. We need to defend 15. We need to address the housing crisis. We need fully funded social services. We need to defend our seat in City Hall for working people. And we will.
In my community, the black community, I need you to understand that this is my community, and we are devastated. I'm looking at the extraordinary abuse of
I agree. Can I finish my speech? When we fight, when we fight, when we fight, when we fight, Sir, can you respect everybody here? My sisters and brothers, we need to defend our seat in City Hall for working people, and we will. We will build on what we have won, and we will fight for our vision of this city. We will fight. We will fight for the interests of the 99%, for all of us in City District 3, for everyone in this city. And we will work in solidarity and cooperation with people in other city districts. If we organize, we can counter the power of big money, of big developers, of union-busting corporations flooding their cash into our district. Can we do this? Will we do this? Sisters and brothers, our vision is inclusive of all human beings. By fighting for change in Seattle, we join the hundreds of millions everywhere who share our vision for society. A society that is free of oppression, war, and exploitation. A society that is based on global sustainability. That is why I am against corporate greed. And that is why I am a socialist. That is why I know we can only do this together or not at all. Working people, young people, the elderly, all of us need to get involved. We need to take our power into our hands collectively. I promise you, I will keep working relentlessly to give everybody who is marginalized a voice in City Hall. And beyond that, I will continue to use all the possibilities I have as a city council member to engage and activate the 99%. The powerful only appear so as long as we remain silent, and we won't. We will take the housing crisis head on here in Seattle. We will make the big developers pay to build affordable housing. We will fight to tax the super wealthy to fund mass transit and education. We will continue to show how to push back against corporate cash and corruption in politics. We can develop further this grassroots campaign to defend our seat on the City Council, a campaign of mass involvement to push back against the money of Vulcan, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Restaurant Association, and the big developers. I thank you so much for your generous contributions today. More sacrifices will be needed. Please ask your friends and family to follow your lead and to donate. But this campaign also needs your hearts and souls. From now until August, and from August until November, please fill in your volunteer form and hand it to the campaign staff. Help me with door knocking, postering, leafleting, and spreading the word. We have people's power. We have completely shifted the national discussion on inequality. We have already impacted the lives of millions with our leadership. Let us continue. Solidarity.